Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We would like to welcome everyone today and thank everyone for joining us for our regular Sunday program. Today we have a very wonderful program lined up for you. Our topic today would be the wonderful personality of Uddhava. And our guest speaker, special guest speaker we have today, who has spoken various times on this platform, will be His Grace Shyam Bihari Prabhu. So before we continue, before we get into the class, I will go ahead and just give a brief introduction about Shyam Bihari Prabhu. So Prabhu is a very integral part of our community here in ISKCON Atlanta, and he has played many different roles within our community. Currently, Prabhu is preaching and has a Bhakti Vriksha in the coming area of Atlanta, where he holds different programs, weekly, monthly kirtans, weekly classes, and he has a wonderful online morning program as well that he partakes in. And Prabhu acts as a mentor and a guide and a Shiksha Guru to many of the devotees here in Atlanta. So we are very fortunate and we are very grateful and we are very happy to have His Grace Shyam Bihari Prabhu join us today. So Prabhu, without any further ado, if you are ready, you may please go ahead, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Naveen Prabhu. I'm not capable or qualified for all the glorification that you're giving. All the programs that have happened and coming is because of all the wonderful devotees that are out there, and they make it happen. So my humble obeisances to all those devotees. My most humble obeisances to all the Vaishnavas who are gathered here today to listen to a few words on Uddhava. This is a very deep subject matter, a subject matter that cannot be talked about or explained in an hour's time. It takes days. The Bhagavad Gita is so complex and so extensive that it requires much more deeper study. But it will be my attempt today to give an overview of this intense subject matter. And I hope that I can put it in simple words that might resound with the gathered audience. So please excuse me if I speak something which is not in line with our acharyas, which I will definitely try to do, or if I say something that is in some way not acceptable to you, it is just my feeling. And with that, I would like to request everyone to please be tolerant and bear with me. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Sorry to interrupt you. There's just some, I think they're saying the volume is, could you maybe turn up the volume or just move closer to the speaker? They're saying it's sounding a bit low, Prabhu. I'm sorry.
Let me try. Hare Krishna, is that any better?
Yes, Prabhu, perfect. It's much better. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaaya Bhutale Srimati Radharani Swami Namne Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Charanya Vishwesha Srimati. Uddhava is one of the most exalted personalities that is spoken about in great depth in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In fact, Lord Sri Krishna considered Uddhava as non-different from him. And so before we get into the character of Uddhava and talk about how he interacted with Krishna and how he achieved Krishna's mercy, let us try to understand who's Uddhava. Uddhava is actually the son of Devabhaga. Devabhaga is the brother of Vasudeva, and he is the first cousin of Krishna. And that is the material relationship between Krishna and Uddhava. Uddhava was actually born and raised in Mathura, and he was a great intellect. He was a real jnani. He had very good knowledge. He was very intelligent, and he was actually educated by Vṛṣṇi. Vṛṣṇi is the spiritual master of the demigods. And so Uddhava also accepted Vṛṣṇi as his spiritual teacher. And so he was very intellectual. He was a jnani really. And many a times, even Krishna used to take advice from Uddhava in the assembly of Ugrasena when Krishna made certain decisions or when he wanted some kind of affirmation. He would turn to Uddhava and he would ask Uddhava for his opinion. That is how much Uddhava was respected by Krishna himself. But Uddhava was really a jnani, and Krishna wanted to elevate him because Uddhava was very content in himself. He was content in his love for Krishna, and he was content in his jnana, in his intellect. But that was not sufficient for Krishna. Krishna wanted even more from Uddhava. And as a result, Krishna uses Uddhava to go to Vrindavan and to give his message to the gopis. So Krishna had a dual purpose there. The dual purpose was one, of course, to give his message to the gopis, but more important, he wanted Uddhava to understand what true bhakti is, what true love for Krishna is, because Uddhava's love for Krishna was actually hindered by his not being in the bhakti yoga stage. He was more in the jnana yoga stage. And that is what Krishna wanted to do, was to elevate him so that he would understand what true love for Krishna is. And so when Uddhava went to Vrindavan, as you all may know from the Srimad Bhagavatam or from reading the Krishna book, when Uddhava went to Vrindavan, he looked so much similar to Krishna that when the gopis saw him coming, they thought that Krishna had returned to Vrindavan. But when he came closer and when they saw him, they realized that this was not Krishna, but this was Uddhava. And so Uddhava, coming with the message of Krishna to the gopis, he was speaking from the platform of jnana. He was trying to console them by giving them the message of the Vedas, by telling them about detachment and not to be attached to the fruits and all that. And that really did not resonate with the gopis. The gopis told him that for us, Krishna is in every thought, in every remembrance, in every aspect of our life. We have Krishna from top to toe. We are totally full with Krishna. So what will this scriptural knowledge that you're giving me will do? There's no place for that in us. And Uddhava, through his association with the gopis, he saw their love for Krishna. He saw their surrender to Krishna. He saw what Krishna meant to them, and anything else and everything else was meaningless. That was what Krishna's intention was in sending Uddhava. If the Uddhava's transformation was so intense, so complete, that from Jnana Yoga, just by associating with the yogis, with the gopis, he was transformed into a bhakta, into bhakti yoga. He understood what true love for Krishna is. In fact, we can learn from Uddhava that he developed this intense desire that he should be a blade of grass outside the homes of the gopis in the courtyards, so that they would step on him and he would get the dust of their lotus feet on his head. That was the transformation that came about in Uddhava, from being a jnani to being so humble that he wanted to be a blade of grass so that he could get the dust of the gopis on his head. And it is said this intellectual, when he returned to Krishna, he was so humbled by the unconditional love of the gopis that now he was totally in the bhakti yoga stage. He could truly understand what love for Krishna is. And so now he was qualified, as far as Krishna is concerned, for him to understand the message of Krishna, the instructions of Krishna, and the presentation of Uddhava Gita to the world. Now, please keep in mind that Uddhava Gita and Bhagavad Gita are very similar, but there is much more in details in Uddhava Gita which is not there in the Bhagavad Gita. The reason for that is because the Bhagavad Gita was spoken on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And Krishna had very little time to speak it. He had to speak it in 45 minutes, it is said, because the war was about to start. But when Uddhava met Krishna, Krishna was getting ready to leave the planet. It is said that the demigods actually came to Dwaraka and came to Krishna, and they told him that the reason for which you had come, as Krishna says, to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants, they say those reasons have been fulfilled, and now if you desire, you can return back to your abode, they tell Krishna. And so Krishna says, yes, I agree, but there is still one important task left for me. That task is that this Yadu dynasty is become very strong, and it will be a cause of distraction on this earth planet. It will be a cause of distraction. And so before I leave, I have to make sure that I take care of this as well. And then, as we know, he arranged for the curse to happen on the Yadus, and then they went to Prabhasa, and where they actually fought amongst themselves, and the Uddhava dynasty came to an end. That was all planned by Krishna himself. And having achieved this goal, then Krishna was ready to leave the planet. And he instructed Uddhava that you should go to Badrika Ashram, and there you give the message and the instructions that I will give you to the sages, and then you will have completed my purpose of coming to this planet. And Uddhava requested Krishna that since you are returning from this planet, I do not want to be here, I want to go with you too. But Krishna refused. Krishna said, no, you have to complete this task for me, and then after that, you can settle in Badrika Ashrama till you leave this planet. And so Uddhava, feeling separation from Krishna, actually, he meets Krishna under this banyan tree, where, as you know from the story from Krishna's book as well as from other places, how Krishna was shot by an arrow which was released by a hunter, and that arrow hit the nail of his toe, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go into the details because that is a side subject, and we're focusing on Uddhava. And so under that banyan tree is where Uddhava met Krishna, and Krishna spoke the Uddhava Gita. So Uddhava is the source of this Gita that was presented to us in the Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 11. Now it is said that the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, is the lotus feet of Krishna. And as we progress through the Srimad Bhagavatam, we are actually studying body of Krishna, all the way to the 10th canto, which is considered as the face of Krishna and the hair of Krishna. And the 11th canto is considered as the crown, which is placed on the head, which is the crown of the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Uddhava Gita, basically, Krishna gives everything that's in the Bhagavad Gita, but now he gives it with examples, with stories, and he gives it in such a way that it really resonates with us, the people of Kali Yuga who will be reading and be getting this message of Bhagavad Gita. And so the Uddhava Gita is a much more detailed song of Krishna, is the message of Krishna, and it provides much more than what the Bhagavad Gita describes. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is easier to understand than the Uddhava Gita, especially the purports of Prabhupada and the way the Bhagavad Gita is put together. It's easier to understand. Uddhava Gita is a little more complex in the sense that it has to be understood under proper guidance. It has to be understood with an authorized teacher who is in disciplic succession. And then the Uddhava Gita begins to reveal itself. The story of Pingala, the story of the Avanti Brahmana, the Avaduta Brahmana, all these are very instrumental in understanding the purpose of human life, and it also is instrumental in our purification and imbibement of Bhakti Yoga and understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Uddhava Gita should be read scrutinizingly, and it should be read with the guidance of an authorized mentor or your spiritual master. Then Uddhava Gita starts making a lot of sense. It starts revealing itself. The Bhagavad Gita is 18 chapters and it has about 700 verses. The Uddhava Gita is actually 23 chapters in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It starts from chapter 6 or 7 and it goes all the way up to chapter 29. I think from 7 to 29. Yeah, 7 to 29. So it is 23 chapters and it has almost about 980 shlokas. So as compared to 700 shlokas in Bhagavad Gita, the Uddhava Gita has about 980 shlokas. The Bhagavad Gita talks about 5 subject matters, which is Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, Kala, and Karma. Right? Those are the 5 main topics that are covered by the Bhagavad Gita. Whereas the Uddhava Gita, it focuses on bhakti, it focuses on jnana, and also on vairagya. Those are the 3 topics. But those 3 topics also cover the 5 topics that are in Bhagavad Gita and even more. So the Uddhava Gita is more detailed and it gives much more insight into bhakti as well as jnana. So that is what Uddhava Gita is really made of. And so when Uddhava hears the Uddhava Gita from Krishna, Krishna has a lot of time there because he's preparing to leave. So it is said that the Bhagavad Gita helps us in our daily life because we are all in a war ourselves, Kurukshetra war. The Kurukshetra war is symbolic of our struggles in our day-to-day life. In our day-to-day life, we have so many challenges. We are battling so many different situations. We're trying to say focus on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is what Arjuna faced in the Kurukshetra war too. He had so many challenges. He had to fight his own family and he was totally consumed by all kinds of emotions. In fact, he was willing to run away. Sometimes in our own lives, we face such situations that we cannot understand how to handle. We also feel like running away, right? So there's a lot of similarity between the war at Kurukshetra and our daily lives. And so when we hear the Bhagavad Gita, we find ways. Bhagavad Gita provides the ways to every situation, to every challenge. There's not a single question that is not answered in the Bhagavad Gita. And so Bhagavad Gita is really our daily struggles. But Uddhava Gita prepares us for leaving this body and going back to the spiritual world. Uddhava Gita is going beyond our daily life and bringing us to that stage when we are ready to leave this planet too. And it prepares us. It prepares us so that when we leave this body, we can achieve the ultimate destination, which is the goal of human life. So that's what Uddhava Gita does. It prepares us, right? That is the difference between Bhagavad Gita. It has everything that the Bhagavad Gita has, but it has much more. It prepares us for our return back to the spiritual world. So that is the reason why it is more elaborate, and it's really an interaction between Uddhava and Krishna. Uddhava asks many wonderful questions, and in response, Krishna is giving all that we need, everything that we need in order to perfect our lives and to achieve this particular goal of human life, which is to return home back to Godhead. Now, I will quote a small paragraph which was given by Srila Prabhupada in the introduction and in the introduction to Uddhava Gita, and he speaks about Uddhava. He says, Lord Krishna, I'm actually reading, Lord Krishna is factually the spiritual master of the three worlds, and is the original source of all Vedic knowledge. It is very difficult, however, to understand the personal feature of the absolute truth even from the Vedas. His personal instructions are needed in order to understand the personality of Godhead as the supreme absolute truth. Bhagavad Gita is the evidence of such transcendental knowledge in gist. One cannot know the Supreme Lord unless one is graced by the Lord himself. Lord Krishna exhibited this specific mercy towards Arjuna and Uddhava while he was in the material world. Undoubtedly, Bhagavad Gita was spoken by the Lord on the battlefield of Kurukshetra just to encourage Arjuna to fight. And yet, to complete the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, the Lord instructed Uddhava. So this is straight from the words of Srila Prabhupada. He's saying to complete the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, the Lord instructed Uddhava. The Lord wanted Uddhava to fulfill his mission and disseminate knowledge which he had not spoken even in the Bhagavad Gita. So you can see that there is things in the Uddhava Gita which was not spoken in the Bhagavad Gita. The purpose of the Bhagavad Gita was different as compared to the purpose of Uddhava Gita. And so Uddhava Gita goes beyond the Bhagavad Gita, and it prepares us. It prepares us for that last moment when we will leave this planet. From this, we can understand that although Uddhava Gita contains instructions similar to those imparted to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, it also contains very confidential knowledge that are not available even in the Bhagavad Gita. Right? And so you can take it from Srila Prabhupada himself that the Uddhava Gita is much more expansive and much more detailed as compared to the Bhagavad Gita. And to understand why Uddhava was chosen for giving us the Gita by Krishna, why Uddhava was chosen, we will look at the words of Krishna himself. So as Krishna says, Arjuna is very dear to me, he has something similar to say for Uddhava. So he says, Na tatha me priyatama atma yonirna shankaraha na cha sankarshano na shrir naivatma cha yata bhavan. That means no one is as dear to me as you, O Uddhava. Not my son Brahma, not Shiva, who was born out of my very body, not my brother Sankarshana. Sankarshana is Balaramji, right? Not Lakshmi, my consort, who dwells eternally on my chest. Even my own body is not as dear to me as you are. This is so significant because Krishna, the Supreme Person, is qualifying Uddhava. He is clearly saying that my son Brahma was born from me. Brahma comes from Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, right? Shiva, who is actually part of my body. My brother Sankarshana, who is my first expansion. Lakshmi Devi, who's constantly serving me and dwells on my chest, right? The Srivatsa that he has on his chest. Even my own body is not as dear to me as you are. Now you can imagine the position of Uddhava when it comes to Krishna. How much Krishna considers Uddhava as dear to him. That all the others that you would think are very dear to Krishna, who are his associates, who are so close to Krishna, they are not even in the same level as Uddhava. They are not even considered as so dear to Krishna as Uddhava is. And this is why Uddhava is the perfect person, the perfect associate of Krishna, through whom the Uddhava Gita can be given to us. He's so qualified. He's not only a Jnani, but now he's also a Bhakta, because after associating with the gopis, his love for Krishna is so intense, so solidified, so crystallized, that he is the perfect person for Krishna. Please don't consider that he's a cousin of Krishna. That's just a material relationship. But more important is he's an eternal associate of Krishna. He is so dear to Krishna that Krishna is glorifying him in this way. I mean, even Krishna is going to the extent of saying, even my own body is not so dear to me as you are. And Krishna is the supreme person. So you can understand the position of Uddhava in terms of the words of Krishna himself. And so that is the reason why he is the most apt, the most perfect person through whom Krishna can give us this Uddhava Gita. And so when Uddhava goes to Badrikashrama and shares the message of Krishna with the sages, it's through their media that we get it. Through the Srimad Bhagavatam, we get it. Because through Uddhava, the sages get it, and then they distribute this knowledge to all of mankind in Kali Yuga. And so this is why Krishna chose Uddhava, because he is so dear to Krishna. And so we'll spend the next 20-25 minutes just touching on the high points of the Uddhava Gita. Please remember, please keep in mind that Uddhava Gita is not something that can be spoken in 20 minutes. Uddhava Gita is not something that can be spoken in 1 hour. We're talking about 23 chapters and 908 shlokas. So we're going to take an overview of the Srimad, of the Uddhava Gita, because the Uddhava Gita is very extensive. So we'll touch on some of the important aspects of Uddhava Gita and what we can learn from it, especially the stories that Krishna provides in order to enhance that knowledge that he is giving, the message that he is giving, because through those stories we learn a lot, because it somehow relates to our current position in this material world. And so when the Uddhava Gita starts, the very first lesson that we get is from the Avadhuta Brahman. This is in chapters 8 and 9 of the Uddhava Gita, or in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And there this Avadhuta Brahmana teaches us how we can see everything that we see before us as an object of knowledge from us, something that we can learn from. That Avadhuta Brahmana talks about 24 gurus, and he explains how these are gurus, what he learns from each of them. And some of them are so esoteric in the sense that if we were told that you can learn something from a python, we can think and we'll say, what can we learn from a python, or from a moth, or from a bee, right? But here is the Avadhuta Brahmana who's teaching us how we can learn something from everything that we see around us. Everything, all 24 items that he mentioned, he treats them as gurus, and he explains what he has learned from them. And so he mentions the python, the ocean, he mentions a moth, a bumblebee, and a honeybee. He talks about elephants, a honey thief, a deer, fish, and so on. He talks about all these things that we see every day. In our day-to-day life we see, but we don't pay attention to it. And here is this Avadhuta Brahmana who is focused on everything he sees. And when he sees something, he is actually internally meditating on what can I learn from this. And what he learns from these different living entities, it actually purifies him and brings him to a stage of self-realization. It is said that this Yadu king who saw this Avadhuta Brahmana, who was totally naked, and he was totally undisturbed by anything and everything around him. That Yadu king was so astonished that who is this person and how come he's so composed and so contained within himself that nothing disturbs him. And so when he approaches this Avadhuta Brahmana, then he learns how these 24 gurus are teaching us all the different things that we need to know, whether it is tolerance, whether it is how to handle different situations, how to be self-composed. Everything can be learned from these different 24 entities that he mentions. He talks about even a prostitute Pingala, right? This Pingala, this prostitute, it is described that she was waiting for a suitor who was supposed to come to her, right? A prostitute waits for a suitor. And so the person who was supposed to come to her never came, and she was so frustrated, and she was so turned away from her own profession. It is said that she took to Harikatha, she took to meditating on the Supreme Person. And believe it or not, she achieved perfection through meditation. And so from this simple story of Pingala the prostitute, we can see how much sense gratification is the cause of all our suffering. As soon as she gave up this sense gratification and turned her attention to the Supreme Person, she achieved the goal of life. She was totally composed, she was totally self-realized, and it is said that she achieved what was the goal of human life. So even from a prostitute, this Avadhuta Brahmana learned how to control sense gratification. And then he gives so many other examples. He talks about a Kurara bird, he talks about a foolish, lazy child, and especially about a young girl who he sees with one bracelet, a conchal bracelet in each wrist, right? And he realizes, it is said that the story goes that one time there were a lot of men who came to her house and she was supposed to cook for them. So while she was making the food, these bangles were, bracelets were a cause of real distraction, in the sense that they were making a lot of noise. And so she started breaking off all those bracelets until she was left with just one in each hand, on each wrist. And it is said that this gives such a wonderful message, is that when there is a lot of people together, there is obviously going to be a lot of mundane talk. Sometimes it will result in quarrel. And so that is all noise in this material world. And so we can actually remove all this distraction, right, by not associating in that kind of atmosphere where there are so many people talking about mundane things which leads to quarrel now. So she had one bracelet in each wrist, and now there was no noise at all. And he understood this Avadhuta Brahmana understood this as a very important message, that we must choose and not associate with too many. Limit our association and also learn from that association. So you can see that Avadhuta Brahmana is so internalized. Even from these small situations, he is taking messages. He is taking messages and treating that living entity or that object as a guru. So it's a wonderful example that Krishna gives in these two chapters about how one can learn from everything. Everything around us has a lesson for us. It's only that we should have the time and we should have the focus, the concentration, and then we can learn from it. Otherwise, we get so distracted. We don't have time to learn from what's around us. We take everything as for granted. and we're just moving through life mechanically. And that is what is coming across from this Avadhuta Brahmana. Then Krishna goes on to describe so many other different aspects of the Bhagavad Gita. He talks about the difference between conditioned and liberated entities. He talks about regulated work. He talks about how he actually touches upon the Varnashrama Dharma, and then later he elaborates on the Varnashrama Dharma over two full chapters. He talks about how Varnashrama Dharma elevates one slowly through karma and brings him to bhakti. He talks about that. And he goes on to talk about the Vedic literatures, what is the purpose, how one can read those, and the essence of all Vedic literatures is Krishna himself. It should elevate you and bring you to Krishna consciousness. So he talks about that. Then he talks about a real sadhu or a Vaishnava, and he talks about the qualities of the sadhu or Vaishnavas, which we also find in the Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 16, I believe, in the very beginning, it gives the qualities of the Brahmana, the sadhu or the Vaishnavas. And that is also described here. It describes how a particular sadhu or Vaishnava is always merciful, is non-envious, always truthful, and so forth. All the 24 qualities that are there that actually describe a sadhu or a Vaishnava is elaborated here as well. It's there in the Bhagavad Gita and it's here also. Then he describes the devotional service and the 64 activities that comprise the devotional service. If you have read the Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami presents that very nicely. And here also Krishna talks about the 64 activities that comprise devotional service as well. I'll just touch on the first six. The first six are the important ones where Krishna describes them as seeing, what we see, what we touch, what we worship, what we serve, glorify, and offer obeisances. Those six are mainly related to deity worship. And so Krishna elaborates on these six and talks about deity worship towards the end of this Uddhava Gita. There's one whole chapter which is focused on deity worship itself. But here he starts touching upon it as one of the important aspects of devotional service, because through deity worship, one develops purification, one develops a relationship with the Lord, and one can actually come to a stage where one sees Krishna in the deity. The deity is no longer the Archa Vigraha form, but one actually sees Krishna in the deity itself. So this is very nicely presented in the Uddhava Gita. There's one whole chapter which is dedicated to this deity worship. And of course, you cannot have the Uddhava Gita without actually talking about association, because association is the foundation of all bhakti. And so subsequent to Uddhava's question, Krishna elaborates on the association. He talks about good association and he talks about bad association. And he explains how one has to choose the association and be very careful that that association is always inspiring and leading to advancement on the spiritual path. One must be very careful of the association. I will read one small paragraph again, which Krishna gives, which is very important to this aspect of association. Krishna says, the young women of Vrindavan displayed such deep attachment to Lord Krishna that their minds, which were overflowing with the ecstasy of being with him, perceived an entire night spent in his company just as a fraction of a second. So, as we know, Krishna performs the Rasa Leela with the gopis, and that one night of Brahma, when he performs this Rasa Leela with the gopis, for the gopis it was just 1 second. That is how fast it passed away. Now, what does this tell us? What this tells us is that when we are in the association of devotees who inspire us, time becomes immaterial. Sometimes when we are in the association of devotees for a few hours, we don't even realize how those hours passed away. We don't even realize. It's like time just flies. And that is the kind of association we are looking for, is that association which inspires us in our devotional life. And it is so and we get so involved in it, so we become so engrossed in it that time becomes immaterial. We don't even realize time. The gopis were so involved in Krishna that a whole night of Brahma was like a second for them. And so Krishna explains that this association, like the young woman of Vrindavan, this is the kind of association which is the most inspiring. However, he goes on to say, when Akrura took Sri Krishna along with Baldev to Mathura, the gopis even thought each night without him to be equal in duration to a millennium of the demigods. Separation from Krishna created such a awareness of time that even a second looked like a millennium. It was so long that a second would also not pass. And so what is this message for us in this beautiful description that Krishna is giving us? Krishna is telling us that when we feel this separation from Krishna, when we actually feel separation from the devotees of Krishna, many times you'll see after a nice program, like we have a Kirtan Mela or Kirtan Fest, when the Kirtan Fest is over, it may be a 3 or 4 hour Kirtan Fest, right? After that, we feel some kind of a vacuum. Oh my God, it's already over. When is the next one, right? We're waiting anxiously for the next one, right? That is the separation part. One is Sambhoga, being in association of devotee, and one is Vairagya, missing that association, waiting anxiously for the next time when I can again associate with the devotees. So you can see this beautiful message that Krishna is giving us is actually encouraging that association with like-minded devotees and the yearning to be in the company of those devotees when we don't have them. Because then we value that association. Then we truly value that association. Just like the Vrindavan gopis, for them each second was like a millennium being separated from Krishna. That's the kind of feeling we should also have when we are not in the association of devotees. When can I be with the devotees again? So being tormented by separation from Lord Krishna, they could not imagine anything that would give them satisfaction other than his return. So we also, being separated from devotees, should feel this kind of thing, because the devotees of Krishna are representative of representing Krishna. When we feel this kind of separation from devotees, we will feel the separation from Krishna as well. And Krishna will automatically be attracted to us. So in this beautiful way, Krishna is explaining to Uddhava the importance of association. It's very important to be to understand that without association, one is lost in bhakti. That becomes too dry. That bhakti becomes too dry, and ultimately it falls away. Ultimately, you cannot maintain it. The bhakti can only be maintained in association of devotees. And then Krishna talks about how he came as the Hamsa Avatara. As those who have read in Canto 11, Krishna actually appeared as the Hamsa Avatara. It was one time, it is said that the 4 Kumaras, they came to Lord Brahma and they wanted to know, the question that they asked is that we are actually wanting to know the cause of creation of Lord of all living beings. And when they questioned Brahma, it is said that even Brahma could not properly answer the Kumaras, because their question was much beyond just the creation of this material universe. They wanted to know about the means for driving away desires for sense gratification. They wanted to know that. And so Brahma, as usual, he meditated upon the Supreme Lord. And it is said the Supreme Lord himself appeared as the Hamsa Avatara. In the Canto 11, it is described that the Hamsa Avatara then came and gave instructions about the identity of the self. He talked about the spirit soul. He talked about the different states of consciousness. There are three states of consciousness. One is wakefulness, one is sleep, and one is deep sleep or dreaming. One is sleep, in the middle is actually dreaming, and then there is deep sleep. This actually represents the three modes of material nature. In wakefulness, you are in the mode of goodness. You are wakeful. It means you are mindful, you are aware, you have some knowledge. In dream, you are actually in the mode of passion. Always we are pursuing things, right? That is the state of dream. And when we are in deep sleep, it is compared to ignorance. And so Krishna in this Hamsa Avatara explained to the Kumaras about these three modes, and he educated them, gave them the necessary knowledge. So that was the purpose of the Hamsa Avatara appearing, right? And then Krishna went on to describe the superior process of devotional service. He described about how Karma Yoga can elevate one, but Karma Yoga can bring you to a stage of enjoyment in the heavenly planets. Until Karma Yoga does not come to Bhakti Yoga, it cannot elevate you beyond the heavenly planets. It can only bring you up to the stage of the heavenly planets. And after that, you again have to take birth. So it's a temporal stage, it's a temporary stage, right? So one again comes back. And so he talks about how one must elevate oneself beyond Karma Yoga to Bhakti Yoga. And after he talks about that, he also talks about, he responds to Uddhava's questions about the different opulences of Krishna. And he talks about his 6 major opulences, which are the source of all opulences in this material world, right? Just as in the Bhagavad Gita, as he explains, he says, I am the heat of the sun, I am the light of the moon, I am the ability of man. In the same way, in this Uddhava Gita also, he spends one whole chapter discussing his opulences and how he is the source. He's the source of everything that we see around us. He spends a whole chapter, just like in the Bhagavad Gita, he does the same thing here. He explains in great detail about his opulences. Moving on, after that, he talks about the Varnashrama system. He talks about the 4 Varnas and the 4 Ashramas and how they can elevate one from the lowest stage up to a stage where one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedas are 80% Karma Kanda, and that whole karma in the Vedas is supposed to bring you beyond that 80% to the stage of the Upanishads and the Puranas and ultimately to understanding of Krishna. That is how the Vedas have been set up. And so the whole Varnashrama Dharma is actually to elevate one from the lowest stage to a stage of bhakti. And so he talks about this in great detail in this. And then as he goes on, he talks about Karma Yoga, he talks about Jnana Yoga, and finally he comes to Bhakti Yoga, right? He talks about all these different aspects of, as we know, it's also available in the Bhagavad Gita, where Karma Yoga is the first 6 chapters, the last 6 chapters are Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga is in between. So in this way, in Uddhava Gita also, he talks in detail about Karma, Jnana and Bhakti, right? But he doesn't just stop there. He then talks about people who do not take up to any kind of yoga, whether it's karma, jnana, or bhakti. Those who do not take. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, he spends 2.5 chapters talking about the 3 modes of material nature. Even the final chapter, chapter 18, the first 40 verses are focused on the 3 modes of material nature. And then starts the conclusion. And before that, he has talked 2 chapters on material modes. That's how important it is to understand, because Jnana Yoga is all about understanding the three modes of material nature. Until you don't understand that, it becomes difficult to understand the self. And so that is the reason why he spent 2.5 chapters in Bhagavad Gita just talking about these three modes. He talked about how what we eat, how what we worship, what charity we perform, all these different things, what austerities we perform, all these three things are controlled by the three modes. He spent so much time, 2.5 chapters in Bhagavad Gita just talking about that. And so in the similar way, in the Uddhava Gita also, he talks about this in great detail. He talks about the 28 different elements of creation. And then he talks about a very important subject. He talks about the Avanti Brahmana. Those of you who would have read Canto 11, it's a very significant story that Krishna speaks about. This Avanti Brahmana actually represents people in this Kali Yuga. In this Kali Yuga, people are naturally tend to be extremely greedy. They're miserly, they hold on, they don't share, and ultimately they are very prone to anger. These were the qualifications of this Avanti Brahmana too. He was an agriculturist and he was a merchant, he was a businessman, right? But he was extremely greedy and he was very prone to anger. Very prone to anger, so much so that even his own family was turned away from him. And so it so happens that he lost everything, right? In due course of time, it said that thieves robbed him, his family members deprived him of everything that he had. And of course, nature always comes around, right? The cycle of nature always comes around, and he lost all his wealth as well. And then when everything was gone, then he realized about all these relationships, that his family and the members of his family and all, nobody cared for him. Nobody cared for him anymore. He was totally rejected, right? And seeing that he had lost everything and he was abandoned by everyone, he developed a deep sense of renunciation. He became totally turned away from everything. This whole world was meaningless to him. And so it is said that he actually took up to bhakti. He actually took up to meditating upon the Supreme Lord. And so in this process of meditating upon the Supreme Lord, he actually gave up everything, and it said he became a Tridandi sannyasi. He actually gave up everything and he became a Tridandi sannyasi. And he would live by begging for charity. And because people knew about his previous being greedy and being miserly, people would reject him. They would not even give him. But because of his renunciation and because he took shelter of the Lord, he became very tolerant. He became very tolerant and was never disturbed by how he was treated. And he remained fixed in his spiritual practice, and ultimately he achieved the highest goal. So this Avanti Brahmana is a really good lesson for us to learn, because in this material world we meet all these kind of people. Hopefully devotees are beyond this, but we meet these kind of people, and so we must be aware of this, and we must be tolerant, we must be compassionate, and somehow help these people who are in this state so that they do not have to go through the stage of the Avanti Brahmana and lose everything, but at the same time take the Krishna consciousness. Krishna talks about this Sankhya philosophy when Uddhava asks him a question. He talks about creation and annihilation and how this knowledge cuts off all doubts and bondage, how Sankhya Yoga helps. He talks about that. Then he describes the functional manifestation of the three modes. Functional manifestation means how these three modes manifest, what happens in the mode of ignorance, what happens in the mode of passion, what happens in the mode of goodness, and so on. It goes on. He gives a beautiful story of Pururava. You may be knowing how Pururava was so attracted to Urvashi, who was a damsel from the heavenly planets, and how he practically could not live his life without being with Urvashi, and his total a fixation from Urvashi. But then afterwards, how he gives that up and how he discovers that this whole material existence is an illusion, and ultimately he attains realization of the Supreme Lord, and he attains perfection. There's this story of Uddhava, which is a very nice story. One can read that because one can understand that how we are in this material world so controlled by lust, how we are so attracted to the opposite sex, and how we are controlled by this attraction. And so when one breaks away from this, then one is able to practice Krishna consciousness more seriously. So one who is intelligent, he gives up bad association and he only allows himself to be attracted to saintly persons. He gets away from all this. And so through these transcendental instructions, the Lord actually helps us to break off all false attachment and to bring our mind under control. These saints are always liberated and devoted to the Supreme Person. And so when we take the association of these saints, when we take the association of the sages, then our purification becomes complete. Then we actually become perfect. As you know, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's the story of Narada Muni, how he associated with the Brahmanas during the 4 months of monsoon and attained perfection, so much so that he was able to see the Lord himself. That is actually enunciated by Krishna here itself. He talks about how a saintly association can help you and bad association can destroy you. So he completes this whole Uddhava Gita finally by talking about Bhakti Yoga. He talks about how Bhakti Yoga is highest. It is higher than every other form of practice, and through devotional service only one can achieve Krishna. Through devotional service only. I will read one small paragraph in conclusion, which is very beautifully written here. It says, one should execute all duties for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, keeping one's mind absorbed in Him. One should take advantage of the secret abodes of the Lord where His devotees reside, and one should serve the Lord and celebrate the festivals and holidays in His honor. By understanding all living beings to be Lord Krishna's place of residence, one can attain the ability to see equally everywhere, and thus all faulty qualities of envy, false ego, and so on will be removed. Bearing this in mind, the devotee should give up his proud relatives, his separatist outlook, and his mundane embarrassment, and should offer obeisances flat on the ground to all, even the dogs and outcasts. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Pandita Samadarshana. So to be a Pandita, you have to have Samadarshana. You must see all living entities and you must see the Paramatma in them. And so here it is clearly said that you should offer obeisances to everyone. We should not look at someone as a non-devotee. We should not even talk about someone as being a non-devotee because that's embarrassing. Everyone is part and parcel of Krishna. And so one may take to a spiritual path now, but that does not mean those who have not taken to the spiritual path are not part and parcel of Krishna. Their time will also come when they will start on the spiritual path through Krishna's mercy. So we must look at every living entity as part and parcel of Krishna and worshipable. We may not seek their association in an intimate way, but we can give our association and help them to start on their spiritual path. But we should never distinguish between living entities. We should not discriminate or differentiate between them. Because the internal process of devotional to the service to the Supreme Lord is transcendental and has been established by the Lord Himself, it can never, to the slightest extent, be defeated or prove fruitless. So Krishna is clearly saying, like He says in Neha Vikrama Nashvasti, He says, Swalpam api asya dharmasya. Even a little service done is never lost. So here also it is very clearly says that this can never, even to the slightly extent, be defeated or prove fruitless. Any transcendental service can never be fruitless. It's always perfect. When one offers himself completely to the Supreme Lord with exclusive devotion, the Lord becomes particularly pleased, and thus the devotee achieves immortality, becoming qualified to obtain opulence equal to that of the Lord. Thus, Lord Krishna, whose lotus feet are served by all great yoga masters, spoke to his devotee this nectarian knowledge, which is the Bhagavad Gita, which comprises the entire ocean of spiritual bliss. Anyone within this universe who receives this narration with great faith is assured of liberation. Is assured of liberation. So this Uddhava Gita, is liberating. It's liberating. And I try to give a high overview of Uddhava Gita. Uddhava Gita is so much more. Okay. But what I did was to conclude, I have a small presentation which will just take 5 minutes, which gives you an encapsulation of this Uddhava Gita. I'll try to share it if you don't mind. Let me just give me just 1 minute. It is something that will help you to get a bird's view of the Uddhava Gita. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, Prabhu, can see it.
So here is the, you can see my screen, right?
Yes, Prabhu, we can see the screen.
Okay, so here is the encapsulation in about 6 or 7 slides on the important subject matters of the Bhagavad Gita. The first thing it says is how to become one's guru. It talks about the 24 gurus. Krishna explains, like I mentioned, the story of the Avadhuta Brahmana, who is really, it is said in the scriptures that he is Lord Dattatreya who took that form and who taught us how we can learn from every single object or every single living entity that we see around us. So it talks about the 24 gurus. You can actually read or go back and study it later if you want, because it will be put on YouTube by the managing committee of this program. We're very grateful to them because they provide this opportunity. Then it talks about the process of disentanglement. It talks about how to take shelter through bhakti and not have any selfish desires and to practice varnashrama. How one can beautifully work without attachment to fruitive results. One should approach a bona fide guru with faith and affection, like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, and be eager to receive knowledge of God from him. Such pure spiritual knowledge destroys illusion arising from the material modes. Actually, in Uddhava Gita, Krishna talks about the importance of the spiritual master a lot. If we study this Uddhava Gita, we'll see how important a spiritual master is for our advancement on our spiritual path. Then he talks about how the nature of fruitive activity, how we should not be attached to the fruitive activities, and how we should actually be more like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says karma adhikaraste nama phaleshu kadachana. So he says that one should not be attached to the results of his activities and one should depend on Krishna, right? And so here also he elaborates on the nature of the fruitive activities and how it is binding and one should rise beyond it. Then he talks about the symptoms of the conditioned and liberated souls, how they are different, how the conditioned soul identifies with the material body, whereas the liberated soul, although is situated in the material body, is always situated in the self, right? He is aware of his being a spirit soul and how he is not distracted by all the material aspects around him. Then he talks about a true devotee and the best devotional service. He talks about the 28 qualities that I mentioned about of a true devotee. And then he talks about the 64 activities that comprise devotional service. And then that is also available in the Bhagavad Gita, and it's also spelled out very nicely in the Uddhava Gita. Then Krishna reveals the power of devotee association. I've talked at length on this, and you can get even more information in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's very nicely put together by Krishna. One should scrutinizingly study it. It can bring about a great transformation in our outlook. It can bring about a transformation in the association that we choose, because only through the association of like-minded devotees. Prabhupada was very specific. Let me spend a couple of minutes on this. Prabhupada was very specific when he said like-minded devotees. Why did he not say association with devotees? Because within devotees also, there is a difference in levels and difference in thoughts, right? Prabhupada was very clear that even all devotees can get along in this material world, it will not happen. But those devotees who inspire you in your bhakti, those who actually help you to pursue devotional service, who always keep your enthusiasm high, who keep your determination strong, because these two are the main aspects of bhakti, enthusiasm and devotional service. Those are the devotees you should associate with. That is why Prabhupada was specific in saying like-minded devotees. That does not mean he was putting down any devotees, because I and Naveen Prabhu may get along very well, but me and Karthik Prabhu may not get along. Please forgive me, I'm using you as an example, right? Because I love both of you as much as I love anyone. So I would seek the shelter and the association of Naveen Prabhu, right? So that is what Prabhupada is saying. That does not diminish Karthik Prabhu, because Karthik Prabhu may inspire some other devotees who are very much in Kirtan, but Naveen Prabhu is very much into philosophy, which is what I'm pursuing, right? So he is like-minded to me, whereas Karthik Prabhu is like-minded to someone else, right? So we must seek that association which inspires us in our path of bhakti, So that is why Prabhupada said like-minded. He was not putting anyone down. Prabhupada never does that, right? So we must understand, and we must choose our association which is instrumental in our progress on the spiritual path, which actually elevates us, keeps our enthusiasm and our determination high. And so this is nicely described by Krishna in the Uddhava Gita too. And then he describes the Vedic processes like karma kanda. He talks about karma yoga, he talks about jnana yoga, and finally he talks about how bhakti yoga is the highest. And then he explains the mind's misidentification, and that is the cause of all miseries. The mind is basically falling to the senses, and that is why we are always in a miserable state. But if the mind is under control and we have transcendental intelligence from Krishna, then it becomes easier for us to follow the process of bhakti. It is nicely explained. And finally, Krishna says that no matter what, everything that I've said, karma yoga, jnana yoga, everything that I've said, but bhakti yoga is the supreme process. If you just take to bhakti yoga, then you will achieve me. You will achieve my abode. You will be with me at the end of this life. And that is what the message of the Bhagavad Gita is too. And so here he completes this statement. He says that the devotee of mine, he desires me alone, and he attains me by loving devotional service bhakti. Giving up undue attachment to opposite sex, focusing on me, one should carefully overcome obstacles in bhakti. That is the conclusion. And so through bhakti, it becomes very easy to achieve Krishna. All the other processes are cumbersome. And so that is how he is actually concluding with bhakti yoga. Of course, he explains Ashtanga yoga, he explains the siddhis and vibhutis, he explains the whole varnashrama system as well in the Uddhava Gita, and he talks about the perfection of spiritual knowledge. Then Uddhava learns the universal aspects of civilized life. That is basically, he talks about actual religion, what is dharma. He talks about jnana. He talks about vairagya, detachment. And he talks about aishwaryam, his opulences. We discussed that, right? And finally, pure bhakti surpasses knowledge and detachment. And he talks about material elements. He talks about reincarnation, birth and death, and being peaceful and provoking situations. Like he talked about the Avanti Brahmana, and good and bad association. And he concludes with the glory of bhakti again, right? So, in conclusion, in the Uddhava Gita, it is said, hearing these elaborate teachings, Uddhava offered his prayers to Krishna out of gratitude. Krishna then instructed him to go to Badrika Ashram, assuring him he will soon come back to him. It is said in the scriptures that after Uddhava gave this knowledge to the sages of Badrika Ashrama, he stayed there only. He performed a lot of austerities, and as a result of that austerities, he left this planet and returned back home, back to Godhead. So that was the message of Uddhava Gita. And it is said, one who hears the Uddhava Gita with great faith, he attains liberation. So I tried to provide you as much as I could the message of the Uddhava Gita and the prominence of Uddhava in the life of Krishna. How important Uddhava was in the life of Krishna. I know I have exceeded my time. I beg forgiveness from Naveen Prabhu and from Karthik Prabhu. I just got carried away and tried to give as much as I know, little bit, which is very little bit. But one needs to study the Uddhava Gita scrutinizingly, and one will achieve so much from just studying this. It is as important as Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is universal. Everyone knows about the Bhagavad Gita. But the devotees should know about Uddhava Gita. Uddhava Gita is more confidential than Bhagavad Gita because it's not so broadcast. Nobody talks about the Uddhava Gita. But for devotees, this chapter 11 of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the crown of the Srimad Bhagavatam as it is described. So one must scrutinizingly study the Uddhava Gita, and one can learn so much from it. So many beautiful stories and so much instructions that Krishna gives through these stories and how we can perfect ourselves. So I'll stop here. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak a few words. And please forgive me for any offenses, any misstatements. As you know, I'm fallible and not a very good speaker as well. I just tried to present it as best as I could. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for the wonderful class. It was really, really very, very enlightening to hear from you, Prabhu. It was pouring out of you like sweet nectar. And I know you said in the beginning of the class that the topic is a bit esoteric and confidential, but you presented it in such an understandable and relatable way. And yeah, it was very, very nice, Prabhu. I just want to check, dear devotees, if there's anyone who would like to ask a question or leave a comment or realization, you may go ahead and raise your hand now, and we can go ahead and give you an opportunity. Okay, I do see some questions online, Prabhu, so I'll go ahead and just read them to you. So the first question, he says, we observe even as devotees, we sometimes tend to focus on the faults of fellow devotees. How can we practically try to focus on trying to learn the positive attitudes from them and apply them, and not just judge people in general in Krishna consciousness?
As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, depending on the stages that different human beings are on, the process is different. Like, for example, if we are talking about non-devotees, then they need to, again, I'm using the word non-devotee, I should not. If we are talking about those who are not practicing devotion, for them, the Varnashrama Dharma is the stage by stage process of achieving that purification, right? One can transcend from each mode and come to the mode of goodness, and then one is able to practice devotion. Those who are devotees, then they have a well-defined process. Like Jiva Goswami describes in the Nectar of Devotion, one who chants sincerely, one who seeks the association of like-minded devotees, one who reads the scriptures every day, one who actually performs deity worship in their house, one who lives in a dham, dham meaning making your house into a dham. All these 5 processes are purifying. And this is the process which stage by stage brings us from a negative attitude to a positive attitude, where we see everything in a positive state of life. This whole process is meant to elevate us, to take us out of our current contaminated state and bring us to a state of purity. So depending on our situation, we can actually embrace these 5 limbs of bhakti, or if we are not into devotional service, then we can follow the Varnashrama system, because Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 5, Karma Yoga in Krishna consciousness. So how to perform your prescribed duties, keeping Krishna in the center. And that process is meant to elevate us to the stage of goodness. And then as we become more stronger and stronger, we can transcend the mode of goodness too. And in that state, then all that negativity falls away, and then we are able to remain positive in every situation. We develop all the qualities that Krishna describes that a sadhu or Vaishnava has. We have tolerance, we are free of anger, we actually seek association of like-minded devotees, we don't see negative, or we don't judge anyone. So it is a slow process. But if we stick to this process and we are sincere in this process, then the results are guaranteed, because it's coming from the Supreme Person himself. Our acharyas also validate this by their own example. If we look at our acharyas, they achieved what they did, and we can achieve that too. We don't have to copy them, but we don't have to imitate them, but we follow on their path. When we follow in their path, when we are sincere in the process that has been given to us, then we achieve exactly what they achieved. That means we can transcend these 3 modes, because these 3 modes are the main reason for our attitude. Whether our attitude is positive or whether it is negative, that is because of this influence of the 3 modes. The more we are under the influence of the 3 modes, the more we will experience these anarthas. They will keep coming up, they'll keep coming, becoming distractions for us. But in the sincere practice of this process that has been given to us, then we elevate ourselves beyond these 3 modes, and then nothing can disturb us. These anarthas, they go away. As Krishna says, he takes away all sinful reactions from the past, and he's the one who gives us memory, intelligence, and forgetfulness. So in this sincere practice of this process, what happens? We get Divya Chakshu, we get Divya Gyan as well. Krishna gives us transcendental knowledge and transcendental eyes as well. So we see everything in a positive way, but we have to be sincere in the process, and stage by stage, step by step, it will happen. Have full faith in the process. This process is perfect. There's not even a single iota of any kind of contamination in this process. It is perfect, and the result is perfect. No question about it.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for that wonderful answer. We have just one more question online. So I'll just go ahead and read that question. On the topic of association, sometimes we don't have easy access to good association, and we may have association that can be considered not ideal. But in the association, in that association, we attempt to preach. Would it be fair to say that giving a strong Krishna conscious based association can overpower any possible bad association, all in the name of preaching or spreading the holy name?
That is very true, because Prabhupada also elaborated on this. He said that Krishna says that we should not preach to one who has no faith. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says that. But Prabhupada said, if we don't do that, how are we going to spread this movement? How are we going to get Krishna consciousness to others? So we have to associate with those who are not practicing Krishna consciousness, or who are weak in their Krishna consciousness. We have to associate with all different kinds of people. Should we stop associating with that? That is not what this means. What this means is that we should be the influencer. We should not be influenced by that association. So our bhakti has to be very strong. And so when we give association, we don't take association. But when we associate with our seniors, those who are in Madhyama or in Uttama, there we take association. So there's a difference between that association. One is giving association and one is taking association. So we have to be careful whether we are giving association or we're taking association. Because when we give association, we are giving association but not being influenced by those who are in our association, right? So that is how you overcome those you associate with, which is sometimes bad association. So we should preach, no question. We have to preach. This is our movement. Our movement is all about preaching. Only way we can please Prabhupada is through preaching. To please Krishna, we have to please Prabhupada. And so we have to preach. But we must be careful that that association is not influencing us. We are the influencer. That is what is most important. And in order to be influencing, in order to be the influencer, our bhakti must be very strong. And so it again comes back to that same thing that I said, is that we must sincerely practice the process that has been given to us. We must be very sincere. And then everything falls into place. And to your question that sometimes I don't have any association, nowadays we are so fortunate that here you can see ISKCON Atlanta is giving us such wonderful association. We have all these wonderful devotees here who are giving us their association. We have Naveen Prabhu and Karthik Prabhu who are arranging this. We are so grateful to them. So we have resources for association. Association is always available to the sincere heart. Somehow or the other, Krishna always makes it happen. And if you are strong in bhakti, Prabhupada said you can create a village of devotees yourself. You may be in a place where there's no devotees, but you can start this whole village, according to Prabhupada. You can actually make people into devotees. They are already devotees. You are just awakening their Krishna consciousness. All you have to do is invite people to your house for dinner, and just before dinner have a 10-minute kirtan, and continue that for about 5 or 6 months, and people are so enamored by it, then you can actually move to reading the Bhagavad Gita. And before you know it, you have the village of our devotees. Prabhupada has made it so easy. Who doesn't like music? Who doesn't like kirtan? Kirtan is the soul of the heart, is the food for the soul, is the heart of the soul. Who doesn't like that? So if one wants, one can create a village of devotees as Prabhupada did. When Prabhupada came, where were the devotees in America? All he did was do kirtan in that park. And so we can follow in the path of our acharyas and develop that good association. Right? We become the influencer. But we have to be careful never to be influenced by bad association. And for that reason, our bhakti has to be very strong. We have to be very sincere to the process, and we have to be very rigid and focused on our sadhana. Never miss out. And then Krishna will work through us. He will make it happen. Did I answer the question?
Yes, Prabhu, thank you so much. It was an amazing answer. I think you touched on so many wonderful points regarding association, the giving of association, and the receiving and taking association from other devotees as well. It was put so beautifully, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
I was just echoing what Prabhupada says.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Prabhu, you look so effulgent and so happy and blissful when you are talking. It's really so pleasing and such a pleasure to hear and see from you, Prabhu. We really want to thank you for your association and giving us your time and being with us today. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much, Prabhu, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future again. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
To all the Vaishnavas who are gathered here, may Krishna always shelter and protect all of you and give you very strong sadhana. My most humble obeisances, Dandavas Pranam, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Okay, thank you so much, dear devotees. So we'll move on to the next part of the program now. We just have a few announcements and we will conclude with Nishringa Arti. So yes, thank you, dear devotees, for being with us again on this wonderful Sunday afternoon and hearing these wonderful narrations from Shyam Bihari Prabhu. It was very enlightening and encouraging to hear such a wonderful class today. And coming up next week on our Sunday program, we have His Grace Amarendra Prabhu, who will be giving a class on the prayers of the gopis in separation. A very nice and sweet subject. Also, some would consider a bit esoteric, but this is in preparation for the Kartik month. And please, we encourage everyone to join us for this wonderful class next week, Sunday. And our midweek program will continue as well with the 12 Mahajan series. We will be doing part 7 this coming Wednesday. We will be covering the personality of Bhishma Dev, and our guest speaker will be His Grace Ajit Krishna Prabhu. So we would like to encourage everyone to please join us on Wednesday at 7 p.m. for that program as well. And our weekly kirtan has been going on for the past few months. We'd like to encourage everyone to please come and join us at the temple. It starts at 6 p.m. and goes on to 7:30, 8 p.m. If you are unable to go in person, you can stream it online at ISKCON Atlanta Facebook page or the Kirtan Atlanta Facebook page. So please, dear devotees, if you are in and around the area, please come and join us for these wonderful evening kirtans on Sundays. And just to mention a few upcoming festivals, on October 15th, we have Sri Madhvacharya Parents Day. On October 16th, we have Pasu Kusa Ekadasi. And October 17th, we have Srila Raghunath Das Goswami Disappearance Day, as well as Srila Raghunath Bhatta Goswami Disappearance Day and Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Disappearance Day. So on the 17th of October is a very auspicious day. We'd like to encourage the devotees to please prepare accordingly to observe these days. And on October 21st is the beginning of the most beloved month of Kartik, Damodar Mas. And please check us out on our social media platforms, on our Linktree page. All our details are posted regarding upcoming festivals, any updates regarding temple, and any info you would need to know regarding ISKCON Atlanta are all on our social media pages. We are on Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and YouTube. All our classes are uploaded, and you can rewatch them or share them as you like on our YouTube page, ISKCON Atlanta. And we would just like to send out some prayers for these wonderful devotees who are still facing some health difficulties. His Holiness Jaipataka Swami, His Holiness Amla Bhakta Swami, Her Grace Govardhan Leela Mataji, Her Grace Uttam Radhika Mataji, His Grace Shyam Govinda Prabhu and family, and all the doctors who have helped fight the COVID-19 pandemic. And to anyone who we haven't mentioned, we would like to send out prayers. So we would chant Hare Krishna in a prayerful mood 3 times. So please, dear devotees, if you can join me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you so much. We hope and wish and pray for the well-being of these devotees, and we pray that they make a speedy recovery. So yes, thank you, dear devotees, for being with us today. We will now conclude with Nishringa Arti. We have our little wonderful Kirtaniya, Garima, the daughter of Champakalata Mataji, who will be leading us in Nishringa Arti. So dear Garima, if you are ready, you may please go ahead. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Garima, for leading us in a wonderful Nrsimha Arti. And also thank you to Mataji, Champakalata Mataji and Sumohan Kopo Prabhu for chorusing and playing instruments so wonderfully. It was such a wonderful Nrsimha Arti to conclude this beautiful program. So yes, dear devotees, we will now conclude the program. Thank you all for being with us, and please continue to join us on this platform in the future. And yes, please take care, and we hope to see you soon. We will now take leave. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.